Awesome. Good evening, everybody. This meeting is in recess until the people who have refused to put masks on leave. Thank you.
That knows what she's talking about. Thank you very much. I'm gonna leave so that these other people can have their rights. Obviously, school rules don't apply at public meetings. And this mandate is already on shaky legal ground, okay? And so to use it to deny people their right to be in a government meeting, you just made it that much worse. To say you're gonna shut down a meeting because people won't wear masks, that's even, I mean, just keep creating legal problems for yourself. It's ridiculous. See you later.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am calling this meeting to order. Would you all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll ask you later. We have public comment. Yes, Mr. Hewitt, did you sign up for public comment?
I did.
Then would you like to go to the microphone? All right, Mrs. Scarpino, would you like to go there first, please?
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Madam Chair, and all of the school committee members. Actually, my remarks were meant to come in here and be positive and be forward-looking. Unfortunately, I did not want to talk about the masks. I think the masks are cruel to the kids. Now that you've got me going, they're cruel to the kids. And if we want kids to wear them every day in class, of every minute, then we should too. Why punish the kids when you let the adults off the hook? That's all I'm going to say about that. What I wanted to say, and this is directed to the interim superintendent, welcome. Yeah, there he is. I don't recognize you, have the mask. So over the last 18 months, and I've participated in a lot of these meetings virtually, we've spent a lot of time, and the conversation has focused on COVID, distance learning, masks, budgets, superintendent issues, equity, CRT. What we spent a very, very little time talking about is excellence in education, raising academic performance. And I think, and I'm going to ask, and my recommendation to the chair and to the committee and to the superintendent, we put all those issues aside for 21-22. And we devote our time and we devote our teaching to our teachers and the personal development time, not to social justice, but to academic excellence. We've lost sight of that. We've lost our way. And I think it's incumbent upon this committee and this leadership and this community to demand that we improve our academic performance. I don't have to tell you how poor it is, but it seems to have been getting short shrift because of all these other issues. We need to move them aside. We need to tell the superintendent his job and most of his time, use the 80-20 rule, should be devoted to excellence and teaching our children. That's all I ask. I did not come here for a fight. Did not come here to argue about masks. I come here to be positive because this community deserves it. Our children deserve it. They're going out into an environment where they're going to be at a severe disadvantage, not only with the time they haven't spent in the class, but by the level of education that's being imparted to them. So I implore you, focus on our children and forget about all the other stuff that brings nothing to the table. I mean, this is a good example. Me not wearing a mask, we spent 20 minutes debating about masks. It's not what we should be talking about. Focus on our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hewitt?
Good evening. My name is Peter Hewitt. I'm from Bristol. A couple of weeks ago, I tried to speak at this forum, and I was denied the opportunity to speak because of what was perceived to be 4 interruptions from the floor by myself, and the chair decided to remove me from the speakers list. So what I intend to do tonight is simply indicate to the members of the school committee and the administrators what I intended to say 2 weeks ago. In addition, I just want to make a comment. And I expect Ms. Carroll, who's the legal counsel of the school committee, should have the courage to explain to the governor that the governor has no executive power to mandate that schools or anybody else mask in this state. That is an individual decision. It violates my liberties, my privileges, and I think all of you people putting masks on are cowardly cavers to executive authority, not to state statutes, not to state law, but some executive who decides what is the best for the population. Having said that, my subject is critical race theory. Critical race theory is an ideology that is getting more and more attention, national media attention, and seeing more and more serious parental concern. It is infiltrating more and more public school curricula every day. Personally, I view this ideology as divisive, destructive, and dangerous, and strongly oppose its infiltration into the Bristol Warren School District curriculum. And I believe the infiltration has already begun. I suspect that many parents and taxpayers of Bristol and Warren share my concerns about this destructive ideology. I presume each and every one of you, administrators and school committee members, are sufficiently familiar with critical race theory ideology to have formed an opinion as to whether or not it should become part of the district school curriculum. Parents of children in this school district and taxpayers whose dollars sustain the administrators and teachers of the district have the right to know where each and every one of you stand on this issue. Therefore, I ask each and every one of you to reply to the following question, and I will ask for each one of you to do so. With respect to critical race theory ideology, are you a friend or a foe? And I'll start with Mr. Hicks.
Mr. Hewitt, I'm sorry, but in public comment, if it's not on the agenda, we cannot respond. So
Public
you can
comment
ask-
is open to public comment, is it not?
Yes, and you made your comment, but we are not allowed to respond to your comment.
I think the parents here and the taxpayers and parents of Bristol Warren have a right to know where each and one of you stand. Would you
It
please
doesn't
indicate?
matter what you think here, Mr.
Would you
Hewitt.
please
The
tell-
rules are the rules, and I will not tell them to answer.
Well,
Madam Chair, he's out of order. I'm sorry. We don't respond to public comment. We never respond to public comment, and Mr. Hewitt is out of order.
Well, I may be out of order, but the public has a right to know, and each and every one of you, by failing to answer the question, it's a very telling non-response. Thank
Madam
you.
Chair, he's out of order.
All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. The next thing on the agenda are the accolades. We gave out a lot of accolades last week, but we missed a few, and we're going to mention them tonight. They're not here because they're in college, but we're going to mention their names anyway, and we'll make sure that they get their certificates. What? Yeah. Oh, I did. I did last meeting? No, not yet. It's not finished.
Our apologies to the following athletes who were inadvertently missed in the reading of the accolades on August 16th. On behalf of the school committee and interim superintendent Hicks, we would like to congratulate the following students on the recognition as season 3 individual athletes. Congratulations to National Football Foundation Golden Dozen Award, Colton Dias. All tournament, Hannah Rodrigues. Rhode Island Volleyball Coaches Association, all division selections. Hannah Rodrigues, first team. Isabel Sauvignon, first team. Abigail Ferreira, second team. And Grace Stevenson, second team. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is the consent agenda. I've been asked to remove one of the items on the consent agenda. E? Yes. You can say it. Is there anything else?
No, just for clarification.
All right, I need a motion then to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
A
Second.
A second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? All opposed? Before we go to the one issue that we took out, there's a gentleman here who wants to talk, I'm sure, for a moment about the historic marker at Child and Cole Street.
Good evening. I'm Dr. David Weed from Warren. My only connection to the school system was I helped design the building you're in about 30 years ago. But I'm glad to be back here tonight to present an opportunity for not only the students in these two communities, but also the public in general to learn a little bit more about the history of this area. Some of you may, I think Tara knows that I've been on a study committee appointed by the town council in Warren, and we've been spending a lot of time since last October looking into the early history of the town. And as part of that, I have been working with a number of people in the community to develop a series of markers, historic markers. Some of you may have seen one at Burrs Hill Park, across from the town beach. There's one already made that's not yet installed at the Congregational Church on High Street, that you should be seeing that shortly. And there's one at Mount Hope Farm. And all of those talk about the 17th century. That was the time when these towns were originally formed, and the time when the people who lived here for 10,000 years, specifically the Pokanoket tribe, was eventually displaced from the area. And the major event that occurred was the outbreak of the King Philip War, which took place on Josiah Winslow's farm, which according to the Swansea town records from that period of time, was on the east side of the Kickamuit River. Essentially, the Kickamuit Middle School was that farm location. So it seemed appropriate to put a historic marker right there on the Child Street location just in front of the Kickamuit Middle School, which will also direct people to another set of markers that's been there for 7 or 8 years now, describing the Hugh Cole well that's along the bike path there. So we see this as a really good opportunity for both students and the public and visitors to learn something about the early origins of the town and to be able to connect that history with some of the things that are occurring today. So I would entertain any questions you might have about the location. I've been working with Principal Dennis Morrell. He's, I believe, fully in approval of that location. We got a grant from Representative June Speakman to pay for the design of the marker, and I think that's been almost all of it has been designed, and we're going to be adding one set of sponsors from Dudick Oil and Dudick Bowling Lanes, who came up with the money to pay for the manufacture of the sign, and the town already has the hardware to put it up. And Mr. Malik said that if we have problems with we're going to get either the school, okay, the school will put it up. And if they need consultation, Mr. Malik has provided a number of these in the past, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Thank you very much.
I don't want to take any more time, but I would certainly enjoy a positive vote of support for this location.
Well, you just got it, sir. You're all set. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Mr. Morrell, did you want to say anything? He said, I never passed up the opportunity. Done it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So when I met with Mr. Weed, just very briefly, to talk about the historical significance of Hewitt in its current location, we had a really nice collegial discussion about ancestors and being a Mayflower descendant and a descendant of Roger Williams. It's meaningful for me. It's meaningful for our community, and that Warren has played such an important role in the formation of the state of Rhode Island. So it's something that we all should be very proud of.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob, did you want to say something about what we just did too, as well? Not this, but we did something else in the consent agenda.
We also have a new assistant principal at the high school.
Robert Campion. We are very excited to have him. He will be dropping by this week to partake in some of our professional development days, but will be officially starting next week. I think I have known him for a while, and I think a lot of people here know him. He is coming over from Tiverton. He is an experienced, kind, and strong leader, and I think everyone's very excited to have him.
Is he here?
And I have called him, and he is ecstatic.
Thank you. Good. All right, the issue that we withdrew from the consent agenda is letter E, approval of requisitions.
Thanks. I just have a point of clarification. On one of the POs, it's the 342, it's over by 7,800. Is there a reason why it was over, and how would we make up that budget difference? It's the student, it's the healthcare.
Yes. The assessment of what the services are that have been rendered, as well as, I think if we looked at historical practices, I think the budget was predicated on COVID-related services over the last 2 years. And if you go back 4 years ago, it's upwards of the 60,000. And with the students in place, we're looking at needing to have full coverage.
So we budgeted too low?
So we budgeted it too low, and it's going to be one of those issues that, in the grand scheme of things, I'm coming back before the committee in November with a year-end projection once we open up schools, and we will address these kinds of minor fluctuations because we're going to have something else that has a positive variance. So I fully expect that to be covered from other contingencies that will ferret out over the next 2 months. So
Okay.
I'm confident that this will be an issue, not an issue come November.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Then I need a motion to accept E.
Motion to accept.
Excuse me, can I make a comment? When you speak, could you put your mask down so we
Ma-
can
Could you put your mask on, Mr.
Ma-
Hewitt? You have interrupted this group. Put the mask on.
Madam Chair, Mr. Hewitt needs to put his mask
Mr. Hewitt,
on.
you're out of order.
public hearing if the public are not here what the members of the council are saying. Pull your mask down, speak into your microphone, so these young ladies who are in high school can hear what the hell you're talking about.
Madam Chair, Mr. Hewitt needs to put his mask back on for us to continue.
That's rare. Yeah. Did we voted on that, right?
Yes, I said, no, we didn't.
Oh, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
What did you just vote on? We don't know.
Well, buy a hearing aid then, Peter.
I can't see you.
You're out of order. Knock it off.
Knock it off nothing. You're elected official, for God's sake. Do your job.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have discussion in action. The first one, A, is the use of administrative directives by the superintendent to establish protocols and procedures to address a public health crisis during the 21-22 school year. Bob.
So thank you very much. And essentially what we're talking about here are our plans to reopen school given the state guidance and our requirement to have a policy in place that addresses that. So what the administration has been working on over the summer is examining our situation, what the state guidance is, what the CDC guidance is, and how we should be going about opening that. And I can just walk through that quickly in summary, if that's okay. So essentially, the policy that is before you for consideration is one that would, now the governor has mandated masks. The Council for Elementary and Secondary Education has done a similar action, but talking about how we would back off of masks. And there's a difference between the Rhode Island guidance and the CDC guidance. The Rhode Island guidance is a blanket, and the CDC guidance links mask wearing to the infection rate in the community. And what the policy draft does is it offers us that opportunity to link the mask wearing to the infection rate in the community. CDC says where there is more than 50 cases per 10,000 people, which is considered substantial infection. And Rhode Island is at that stage now. Bristol and Warren have been either side of that recently. They've been up and down, back and forth. And so what the policy record, and it also, we have the question of, are we going to go by the state rate or are we going to go by the local rate? And I have proposed going by a blend of the two. If Rhode Island gets down below substantial to moderate, then masks come off, or masks become optional, I'm sorry. And if Rhode Island stays higher, but Bristol and Warren get down to low, which is below 10 cases per 10,000, then masks would come off. There have been a couple of options that Massachusetts has implemented in the last week that I think are interesting, and I'd be very interested in learning more about them. And they're things we had talked about in our administrative conversations, but because no one else had tried them at that time, we thought, we weren't going to be the forerunners for that. But Massachusetts essentially has said, if 80% of your students are vaccinated, masks become optional, which is a way of putting it in the hands of the students. And the other change that Massachusetts has made, which would really have a significant reduction in quarantining, is called, for close contacts, test and stay. So that if you're a close contact of someone who tests positive, you can test, and as long as your tests come back negative, you can stay in school. So that there's no need to quarantine any close contacts in case, unless they test positive. So that would have a drastic reduction on quarantining, and I'd be very interested to see if Rhode Island picks up on that and gives us that option as well. So it walks through going through a few things. Let me just go ahead here. As you know, face coverings are required. That's part of the governor's mandate. There's no requirement around outdoors, only for indoors, and people can remove the masks if they're alone in their own separate room. And we will have a mask available for people to see. We will be asking parents only to attest to keep screening students for symptoms, but only attest once. But still screen every day, but we have an online attestation form that parents can sign, so that you don't have to remember to go online and attest every single day, which I know I could never remember to do. We're still dealing with the state as far as testing goes. The state's getting away from the Binax testing. We've just learned that since I wrote this, and moving to more PCR and trying to find out how to get that done. They're offering training to people for that coming up, but they are calling for us to do asymptomatic testing as screening, or to send people to testing centers for that. We're continuing to promote vaccination. We did have our first vaccination clinic and another one's coming up soon. One of the things that's been a major topic of conversation is distance learning. And I know there's been some stuff in the newspaper about that. The state guidance and our goals and the state goals are that in-person learning is what works best. And if you can be in-person learning, we want you in in-person learning. There are exceptions for people who have medically based problems that they could be medically fragile, or it could be a student going home to a medically fragile parent at home, that it would not be appropriate for them to be in school, and we will be making accommodations for that, for those individuals. We have a process that we've been working on and put in place today, and people can contact their school principals or their school about how to go forward with that to sign up for distance learning. And I know that's a topic on the agenda for discussion later on. Quarantine procedures have been eased. They've been eased for grades where students are vaccinated 7 to 12, and they've been eased for elementary or K to 6 students who are in stable pods. And essentially what happens, and the physical distancing has also been drawn down from 6 feet to 3 feet. There's been a major change in cleaning, and that they found that contact was not a major spreader of COVID. So we're going back to our daily cleaning routines. And if there is a sick person, then we'll disinfect, but there's not a need to regularly disinfect schools on a daily, on a routine, on an ongoing, consistent basis as happened last year. We'll be continuing our ventilation procedures with the filters and the HEPA filters in the room, and masks are required on all buses by federal regulation because they're considered public transportation. And you can also find our playbook online, and this is also on the website if you have any questions about that.
Thank you. Anybody?
I have some questions.
Go ahead.
He's not wearing a mask. So I have some questions. And I did get to meet with Bob earlier in the week, and he answered many of my questions. So after September 18th, actually in this booklet, we were told we were voting on this, but it actually at the last line in this, it says this policy shall become effective upon adoption by the school committee. So are we voting on this, or if we're adopting this, are we voting on this policy that's before us?
Are we?
So,
No.
So
Yeah.
that was because it says that this policy shall be disseminated to the policy book holders and to all parents and students as part of the ongoing communication strategy of the district with respect to opening of schools. It's 5 and 6 bullet points. And so my question is this something that we are voting on as a school committee? That was my first question.
Did you want?
Madam Chair, initially, when the policy was developed, the governor hadn't come out with his mandate. Since this policy has been developed, the governor has come out with his mandate. So the superintendent has absolutely no choice but to submit this policy as his policy for reopening. And I believe you've already submitted it, correct? Or
Correct.
something? Yeah. So again, tonight it's for information purposes only. However, had it happened before the governor's mandate, you would have had to vote.
Okay.
But it's not necessary tonight because of the governor's mandate. It's simply giving you information, and this is the policy that is being submitted for the reopening plan.
Okay, so then my second question would be, on the 18th, if the governor does not extend his mandate, will we then be asked to re-vote on this?
It would be my understanding that if the governor does not continue his mandate, yes, and that's why Mr. Hicks is giving you the graduated policy
Okay.
in the event that but remember, the governor can only mandate 30 days at a time, And he mandated this on August 17th, and that's why it's going to September
Right.
18th.
Okay, so it would come before us again if he does not extend.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, so my second question, and this goes with, this is more of details, mask breaks. I know in here it does mention mask breaks, and we've had lots of parents ask about specifics to those because some teachers were not consistent. They want to know if it's outdoors only, is there a certain time frame? Because we're going to be asking children to wear masks for 7 hours a day if they take transportation. So that's, what are we looking at for mask breaks even at the different levels?
Sure. So we acknowledge that that was not consistent last year. That has been a major topic of our administrative discussions. And we actually, when I go to all the schools tomorrow, that's going to be something very important that I talk about with the teachers in every school to make sure that we do keep the mass breaks on. I can't tell you exactly how many minutes they are in each school, but they are regularly throughout the day. We will be keeping sure, making sure and enforcing that children do get access to their mass breaks.
Can you give us more details on that once you speak to the schools themselves and let us know?
Exactly. Sure. I will
Yeah,
do that.
only because I think there are a lot of parents that is a major concern with.
I'll even put out something to the public this week before school starts
Thank
on
you.
mass breaks.
My next question is lockers. So you did not address lockers in this memo, and so another concern that parents have been having is lockers. Will the kids, I know they're using them at the high school, but will they be using them at the elementary level this year, or will children have to bring everything back and forth every day again?
I honestly don't know that. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Thank you. So my next question is about quarantining whole classes.
Yes.
I know that from what I've been reading and when we met the other day, you really said that the only difference this year from 2019 will be the mask wearing, with the exception of lunches between the ages of K and 6. But everything else should be pretty similar to 2019 in classroom settings.
So I just heard you say the only difference is mask wearing, but didn't we wear a mask last year?
No, 2019.
Oh, 2019.
2019.
2019.
Yes.
So there is no requirement for physical distancing in grades 7 to 12. So that will be pretty much the same. Grades K to 6 still have, they can physical distance. They don't have the same requirement for physical distance within their stable pods, but outside their stable pods, or unmasked, they still have physical distancing requirements.
So if we have to quarantine, we should be quarantining less children this year. We should not really see a lot of quarantining of full classes, similar to what we saw last year.
So all of our quarantining decisions are done in collaboration with the Department of Health, and they advise us on those. So I cannot tell you that there will not be whole class quarantining next year, but I mean, it depends. That's it depends on a lot of decisions, on a lot of where the kids were, how they moved around the room, what attestations we can make to the state about how well kids kept apart during that time. So if you're looking for me to tell you we're not going to have to do whole class quarantining, I can't tell you that.
So if we do have to do a whole class quarantining, I know that in other districts, they are asking, they're directing their teachers to do live teaching instead of the Google Classrooms. Is that something that we will be doing? So if, say, a whole third grade classroom is quarantined, will that go into live teaching for that class?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And then with, you answered the question about Binex testing. We are going to be stepping away from Binex testing.
Yes, and the state is as well.
Okay. And then recess. So there's been a lot of questions, especially with the smaller schools that have like 2 second grades. And so
recess, do they get to play together? Do the 2 second grades get to go out and interact with each other?
Recess will still be in pods, because the pods are supposed to, yes, recess will still be in pods.
Is there a reason for that?
To try and curtail the spread, should it happen.
So I understand that we're trying to keep everybody in their pods, but these kids are going and they're playing soccer, they're going to the playgrounds, they're going to dance class, they're going to all of these places together, and outside at recess is supposed to be the safe area that they can be, have the normalcy. So I'm just curious on why they're doing it when they leave the school, so I'm wondering why we're not doing it while they're at the school.
So we don't control what students do when they leave the school. We're trying to make sure, as much as feasible, we can curtail having the virus spread among kids. When the virus hits, it can spread very fast, and we don't want to be in a situation where we're putting lots of kids back on distance learning. So it's out of caution.
Is this something that can be revisited if we find that there is not a lot of transmission at the schools?
So it is certainly something, there is no rule that says kids can't intermingle at recess. It can be revisited. I would urge thinking through, if there is no spread, does that mean you don't have to keep your rules, or does that mean your rules are working? So that's a discussion that I think I would say is worth having.
Okay. Then another question is with quarantining. So if a child, or not quarantine, but if a child has, I believe now, last year, this last school year, it was 2 symptoms. I'm not sure if it's 1 symptom right now or if it's still the 2 symptoms. That hasn't really been.
So I haven't seen anything in writing on that. I did have one person tell me that it had gone from 2 to 1, but I've seen nothing documenting that.
Okay, so our district's going to be, at the moment, following the 2 symptoms?
Unless people tell us differently.
Okay. And if they do get sent home for some reason, is it required that they are tested prior to coming back to school?
Yes, they need to be tested. Well, it depends upon why, but it's certainly if someone is, if you're quarantined, it's 7 days and a positive test to come back.
Okay. So if my child gets sent home because they have a headache and a runny nose, as a parent, I have to have that child tested before that child can come back to school.
We would want that to happen, yes.
So you want that to happen, or is that required to happen?
We need that to happen, yes.
Well, no, he didn't say required. That's why I'm wondering if it's, like, for instance, if I wait the 7 days and I quarantine my child, would I still need to have a test done?
We would be looking for a test.
Okay. All right. And then my other question is about consequences. I know we don't like to talk consequences, but if a child does come to school and they don't have a mask and they're given a mask and they still refuse to wear the mask, or I see it happening more at the high school than I do at the elementary levels. What are the consequences for the students? What are the consequences? Do we send them home after so many times? Are there additional consequences?
Sure. You would need to have a mask to come into school. So the first consequence is not coming into school. There would not be disciplinary action for at least the first 3 instances of that. And then we would probably consider what we needed to do. Whether there was some sort of alternate thing we could put together for someone, but we would not immediately make it a disciplinary action with consequences, and would wait at least 3 times before moving in that direction.
All right, thank you very much.
Yes, Nikki.
Mine is a quick question. I believe before you mentioned something about difference in quarantine procedure for vaccinated versus unvaccinated people, and I know that that's the Department of Health. Their quarantine guidelines are very different. Will we be following that in the school? So if a vaccinated person is a close contact, do they still have to quarantine?
No, they do not.
Because that's not in the policy, right?
Okay.
Unless I
If it's
missed
not,
it.
that's an oversight. And I will,
Because I
No,
think that
I think that is here.
I remember reading it somewhere, and I'm sorry if I'm missing it, but I
So-
think it was in your.
No, you know what, I think it was in the first one.
It was
I
in the
don't think it's in this one.
okay, if that's a mistake then, and I will
Yeah,
fix
I
that.
think just to clarify, the
Yep.
difference in the quarantining procedures would be
Yes.
important. Thank you. That was it.
Anybody else? Yes, Darren.
So I understand that this policy, you said, isn't really necessary as far as it being passed by the school committee because the governor.
Right.
However, I always look at policies as guidelines for parents and families. And since this is a policy all about opening protocols, I'm wondering if this is something that would be posted on our website in some form, so that parents and families can easily reference this.
Yes.
And then it could be changed as things hopefully get better or evolve.
I believe you said this is already on the website?
Yes.
Yes, it's already been.
Oh, that's
Yes.
great. I didn't realize
So,
that.
and we just got text from the nurses, two clarifications. DOH said, it did say one symptom is enough, and close contacts who are symptomatic have to quarantine, even if they've been vaccinated. It's asymptomatic vaccinated people do not have to quarantine.
So let's make sure that that's in there.
So just to clarify, Mr. Hicks, this is currently on the website as it is here.
Yes,
And so this is something that your office will be following up on as things change and time moves on?
absolutely,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Anybody else?
Sorry, I had one more quick question. Just to clarify, so student athletes will no longer be tested, mandatory testing for student athletes?
So we do not have a plan for that, no. Most districts are doing that. We would have to be doing that ourselves if we do that, but right now we are not.
All right, thank you very much. At some point, we will have to refer this to the policy subcommittee to write a policy, but I think I'd like to see exactly where we are before we write a policy that then we might have to change again, so. We're not entertaining questions tonight. This is a business meeting. Thank you very much. This is not a workshop, and there is no public discussion except for what was at the beginning of the meeting. The next item on the agenda is, you are out of order, please.
Madam Chair, they're out of order, and if they can't quiet down, they should be asked to leave.
I'm asking you to leave. I am asking you to leave, please. I am asking you to leave. You are interrupting a meeting. No, you do not get to speak tonight. Please stop the recording until these gentlemen Well, that was my neighbor for 30 years. Thank you. The next thing on the agenda is B, which is virtual learning. Tara, did you want to?
I had asked this to be brought forward. I asked the school district to look at it. I think there are many families that, for whether the purpose is that they stand on both sides of the issue. Some families do not want to send their children to school for 7 hours with a mask, and some families don't want to send their children to school because they don't feel it's safe. And so my request was to look at a virtual learning option because it is not in the, this is not in the control of the parents, the mask mandate. It is, it was taken out of their hands. And so unlike last year where the parents were given a choice, this, that parental right, whether you agree with the medical purposes or not, was not given to the parents for their choice. Mr. Hicks gave us the cost of $3,500 on the NPR. I guess that was the cheapest. That's not on this list that he gave us, but the cheapest on the NPR list was $3,500. And I was just asking that the school committee consider that. I know that we had the ESSER funds. I've learned that some of our ESSER funds are not where we thought they were, or that we didn't have them. They've already been spent. But I thought that this was an actual academic program that we should be offering families in the community that feel strongly either way, and using the ESSER funds that the state has provided us. And so I just wanted the committee as a whole to consider that. Because many families, I know some families have pulled their children out of the district and sent them to private schools. Some families, some parents have chose to homeschool their children. And there is an option out there, a $9,000 option that is actually in the community, but many families can't afford that. So I wanted to have the district look at a component that we can afford, that families can't afford necessarily, that we should provide, because this decision was not ours to make. The state took it out of our hands, and again, another unfunded mandate. And so anyway, I wanted the committee as a whole to consider this option.
In order to take any action on this item, you have to make a motion.
Can I make a motion?
Of course you can.
Oh, I make a motion that we approve virtual learning, virtual learning options for families.
I need a second.
I'll second. Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
I just have one question.
Yes.
Sorry. So if the ESSER 3 that's coming in, would that be a viable solution?
You would certainly be eligible to use ESSER 3 for distance learning costs.
Could there be a structure that, I don't know how, obviously it wouldn't be as we had it this year because it's a little bit different. So I don't know how you would assess what the cost would be, but would it be something we could look into to see if we can get families that aren't comfortable, because we've gotten both sides emails, and I just want to see if there's maybe an option for both sides that don't feel comfortable going in the school for whatever reason, but they still get an education. I know RIDE isn't reimbursing us, but they also want us to do all these other crazy mandates. And if we can look at ESSER 3 that comes in and look at possibly having that aligned with some of the other, adding, learning loss and to it as well.
So I'm not sure exactly what you mean by reimbursement. I mean,
The ESSER funds, if we could
Oh.
get paid for the distance learning through the ESSER 3 funds that is coming.
so I think certainly, yes, you could use ESSER funds for distance learning. Absolutely. you
Okay.
could. Mhm. Did that answer your question?
Kind of, it's okay though.
Okay.
Anybody else? Yeah.
I actually like the idea of being able to provide this option to our families. I just feel like right now there are so many questions about how we would do that, who would qualify, do we cap out how many students can do it, how many students per grade, can somebody just decide that instead of homeschooling, they're going to use this option? I feel, again, I agree, I would love to be able to offer this option. I feel like there's so much work to be done to see how we could plan for it, how we could budget for it, how we could, but we're sort of running out of time. I understand that, but you in this memo that I don't know if it would make sense for you to go through it, but you mentioned the considerations that I think are the critical ones. There's a lot of work to be done to be able to provide any program in an equitable and meaningful way, and any robust and worthwhile program. I feel like there is a lot of work to be done to be ready to provide that by September 8th. That's my concern about it.
Mark,
Yes.
I was going to voice similar concern. I feel like voting on this, I don't understand because there's no plan. Like while I agree that there should be a distance learning option for families, this isn't a plan that's being presented. It's just like, it's something that needs more discussion, and these additional considerations on this memo that we have are really great questions and considerations. And I don't think that it doesn't seem like there are answers to them yet. And so I'm just not sure voting yes to this feels like more like voting for an idea rather than what it's actually going to be. And if we're going to vote for something, we want it to be something good that works for everybody, and that isn't just, okay, well, people need this, let's throw this out there. It has to be something that works and has been vetted and all that.
So a couple of those things I can talk to. We have the state has issued a list of approved programs, and they are on the MPA list. So we know we will need to provide distance learning to some children. I mean, that is something we know, that there are children who for medical reasons will just not be able to attend school, or for family reasons or something like that. So we are establishing a contractual relationship with that company. So we will have a contractual relationship with a company that provides distance learning, and then it's an incremental cost for each person that you put in. So those are things that they will have in place regardless. I mean, I think the questions still stand about who, will you set a cap, things like that. I think those are, setting a cap would be hard. I don't know, but, well, maybe not, I don't know. But some of those logistics are in place or will be in place and ready to go. But some of the other questions about who and for how long and whatever, and homeschoolers, those are questions that you need to tackle.
Well, I understand that, and I appreciate your answers to that. I just feel like, for me, voting on something that just feels a bit vague, and this is not on you. I mean, this has been brought up, and it's something that has to be now done. But for me as a school committee member to vote on something that's not a plan in front of me, I just don't quite know how to do that.
I appreciate that. This was requested by Tara, and I know that she went to see Mr. Hicks about it. And right now she's indicated to me that she'd like to withdraw her motion and make a new motion.
Yes, please.
So actually, going on what Erin and Nikki were saying, is it possible?
Wait. If she withdraws the motion, the second has to be withdrawn too.
Second.
No, you withdraw your second.
I withdraw the second.
All right, so now there's no motion on the table.
Can we, my motion is to look into virtual learning options. Actually, how many families in the community are actually truly interested? What are we actually looking at? I know that it is September 8th next week. But I feel that if families are truly interested, this is something that they are willing to wait for. So my motion is to further look into number of families interested and to get the details of what the program or what the option would actually be.
I need a second for that.
Second.
Any more discussion?
So I think probably by next week, we'd have a pretty good handle on how many people want it. We can certainly give you details on the program that we're looking at. It's one that a lot of school districts around are using. And it, yeah, I can do that, yeah.
Okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Could you raise your hand, please? All opposed? The ayes have it. The next thing on the agenda is the FY21 year-end financial report. You're on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll speak slowly and I'll speak loudly. I'm going to exercise my right to keep my mask on. The Finance Committee met last week, actually 2 weeks ago now, because we had the cancellation last week, and reviewed 4 things, the first of which is our fiscal year end for June 30th, 2021. The quick synopsis is we did deliver books to school committee members who had not attended the Finance Committee, so they have these packages either with them or at home, but they've had an opportunity to go through the documents that I'm going to speak to. We did note one change, and we made adjustments on our staffing plan. There was no effect budgetarily, but it was putting the right person in the right school. Those documents I left on the dais this evening for the school committee members who actually have the binder in hand at home. So please take out the staffing plan and reinsert the documents that I presented to you tonight. So the uptick of last year's success is documented in the report, but I'll just provide the highlights. That the school department had planned on using $1.1 million worth of fund balance, but state aid came in at $1,048,000 over what was originally budgeted, and there were cost savings throughout the district, probably due to the fact that we still had a level of virtual learning, so the in-person expenses were not incurred. So we show a surplus of $300,000 operationally for the year. And so I'm happy to report that we didn't use any prior year fund balance and still ended up with a surplus for the general fund.
Thank you.
The report does break down the individual categories in which we've achieved these various results. Happy to talk to the details, but I think the summary numbers are reflective of the success we had from a financial perspective last school year. I'm happy to answer any questions on FY21.
Does anybody have any, well, I need a motion to accept.
Second.
Yeah, a motion to accept the FY21 year-end financial report. Thank you very much. I know how many hours you worked on it. I listened to your presentation at the budget finance meeting. I just can't thank you enough for starting to get us back on the right track with understanding where our money is and what we're spending it on. And again, I appreciate it. So thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Yes.
So, since this is So the thing is he's actually spent like 13-hour days combing through all this, and it really shows. And we appreciate you getting us back on track, like Marge said, and really getting your hands around all the position controls and ways that we can better operate as we move forward, we're losing students and costs are rising, and we can't keep sustaining this the way we're going. And I just appreciate all your hard work, and to get us to this point is refreshing. Thank you.
Thank you. We will be posting this on the website so the public can reference it in the future as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Plus, well, I'll discuss it later. It doesn't matter. All in favor? Yes, Nikki?
Sorry, I have a quick question. And first of all, I apologize, I was not able to be at the budget meeting, so I'm sorry if this is a question that was answered. I am curious as to why health and medical is almost $250,000 under budget.
Well, my understanding would have to go back to when you actually were developing your budgets. You do start the practice in November, December, the prior year. If they were told at the time that our premiums were going to be in the 8 to 10% range, they may not have adjusted them once the premiums become known later in the year. That would be issue one, but I wasn't here to be able to validate that. Historically, what I have seen is if you had a number of retirements and you had senior family members who had family plans and you were able to hire first or second or third year teachers who are single, that's a significant cost savings to take a family and reduce it down to an individual plan. You're talking approximately $10,000 to $12,000 per staff member. So on a $200,000, you're talking the better part of maybe 15 people changing their plans, and you would see that kind of surplus as well. So it's a combination of those two items, I would believe.
Thank you. It's a huge variance.
I know when we go to do next year's budget, I will be explaining the point of which we're using for premium calculation and how many staff members we're looking at building into the budget as possibly retiring. And I'll get that piece of information on the table. But what I will tell you is I typically budget based on active employees at that time. I would not reduce the cost anticipating the reduction. But one of the practices I will be bringing to the district is a November and a March year-end projection based on real. So what will happen is if this was going to be something that should have been identifiable by November 2020 last year, because when we hire our staff, we know who's in place by mid-October. That's why I will always come back to you in November and say, here's your approved budget, and you actually give me a nice segue into the 2022 budget that's on the table. We will be presenting a budget recommendation in November based on how we open up, and I will be giving you the staffing patterns, and we will also give you staffing patterns as they exist in November. So if there's any variances, plus or minus, it'll be very obvious, and medical will be part of that calculation at that time.
That makes sense. Thank you. Wonderfully logical. I appreciate it.
Go ahead.
Tony, is it true that any teacher hired before 93 and retire, you pay 50% of their rider for their Blue Cross?
I don't know that level of detail, to be honest with you. I know that's reflected in the retirement costs.
The issue is, I mean, sad to say, several of those teachers died just recently, and obviously that's another savings. And by the way, it's only to the Bristol teachers before 93. It's not something that the present teachers get.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hicks, when we have this budget that we're going to approve, I would appreciate it if you would make sure that this budget gets to all of both town councils and town manager and administrator in both towns.
I'll absolutely make
Because
sure
they're
that happens.
used to getting this, and I would like them to see our progress so far, and help them to understand where we are and where we're going. So I'd appreciate it if you could do that once we vote on it.
I will.
Thank you. So all in, what?
Madam Chair, so the actuals, we're supposed to legally provide both towns with our financials every month too.
I know, but I'm just, for now, I'm moving to
FY
this.
'21.
Yeah. All right, what? Yes, it's all in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Now, we gave you a segue into your 22 budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The way the agenda is written is 1, 2, 3 being capital, cozy, and operations. The way the binder was presented was opposite. Do you have a preference of which budget you would like to discuss first?
No, go, be my guest.
Okay. Then I'll just go with 22 because it goes by the book. We, as administration, was presented with the challenge of revisiting the school committee's May 15th budget that was recommended for consideration for the upcoming school year. There were a number of folks that were involved with this. You had consultants that were involved. You had the finance committee chair. I want to thank Ms. Ellsworth for her due diligence and being involved with that. It's a level typically not taken on by a finance committee chair, but we understand the circumstances that were in place last spring. And so with the new staff that's come on board, we took the month of July to digest as best we could what was created. And in some instances, some things didn't make sense, but we just let it sit there because we understand the situation. And basically what you have before you is a finance budget for the 2021, 2022 school year that took the current administrators as well as the interim superintendent going through and validating what do we really need. And I circulated documents with our principals and I got their feedback. We in fact had one indication of technology hardware as an example, where folks thought we had 200,000, then it got cut down to about 90,000, but what ultimately got into the system was $35,000. So we know we needed 80,000 because the school committee approved a purchase rec for $70,000 based on an $80,000 understanding. So we went through all of those pieces and we have before you our recommendation. And basically what's transpired is there's a slight revenue change from your original projections of $97,000. It's the state aid final number that was approved by the budget office and by the governor's office in July. So I made that adjustment reflective of the final documents received. And we also were aware that there was much discussion about a lease for computers that wasn't originally included in the May documents. However, everybody acknowledged that that was an expense that needed to be incurred. So we put that particular cost in. It's $291,000. But we did make some other trimming in other areas. So the net impact was $265,000. The real cost driver that you have in front of you is our staffing. There are a number of issues. And the total cost for staffing is $697,000. And so the worksheets that I sent out in your binders, as well as what is on the dais this evening, we tried to break it down so that it was easy for folks to understand. And so we have a building by building, how many people by position are in those buildings by FTE count. So the document's very clear and concise. How many first graders, how many second graders, how many third graders, et cetera, in your elementaries, how many social studies, how many science, how many English, how many math are at your high school and middle schools. We vetted that. There were some shortcomings on some TA positions. There's been demands by the school placed on them for scheduling purposes and outright student need. We factored all those pieces into the presented budget that we have before you this evening. There's a summary sheet that really does a nice job, I think, highlighting the impact by school. And then there were some school committee decisions that were made when I first got here that created either elevation and or reductions. And so all of those pieces have been factored in. We highly recommend that with the savings of not having to touch the fund balance last year because of the success of the 2021 school year financially, that you carry forward that fund balance surplus to offset the projected cost increases that we need to have a balanced budget for this year. It's slightly less than what you used last year, but I will be able to give you a very good indication in November if the trends are not having to utilize those those resources. And to the point that was just made, if we end up having more reductions in our medical costs, because that is one area that, having not put the budget together at that level, I'm still uncertain, so I'm carrying what the medical was projected at. We may see another $250,000 savings in that pocket, and if that were the case, then we take that right off of the $1 million surplus fund balance utilization, and I would make that presentation in November. So we're seeking your support. I know the Finance Committee was supportive of the budget that's presented. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. It really was interesting to sit at a meeting and really understand what was going on. I need a motion to accept this. I need a motion first.
Motion to accept.
Second.
All right, now you have a question.
So I have one question. Again, thank you very much. It's very nice to be able to read things and understand them. But I do have a question. So I heard that we had a secretary at the high school that we were bringing back, that we had laid off. But in this budget that you presented us, that position is not there. So I wanted to just make sure if that person was coming back, where those funds were coming from, and if I am incorrect, is it reflected in what you gave us tonight?
The budget is my understanding of what we've got for approved positions. I am actually in conversations with HR and payroll as we're getting ready to open up schools to devise a report that's going to give me payroll records that will line up with my presentation so I can be able to validate whether we've got the proper budgeted people or if that type of issue will pop out. I would have to defer to my other colleagues if there is in fact another person at the high school that's not part of the budget this evening.
So I can talk to you about that. If that's okay. So we have the right number of FTEs, but we don't have them all into the right place yet, and we're working through procedures to make sure that we get the right people into the right place in accordance with the collective bargaining agreements that we have, so that we have the correct. So we have 2 people who have been displaced from their positions, but we haven't executed those displacements yet.
Okay.
In order to make sure we have the right places for them to go to when they leave that job. Does that make?
Because we had one is because we had someone retire, correct?
Right. So we have 2 people who have been displaced and we have 2 open positions. And but you can't just move people. There's classifications and all
Right.
kinds of things like
Correct.
that. So we're working through the procedures to make sure we end up with the right people in the right places without ever having more people than we're authorized to have.
So then the big question is, we're not adding any money to the budget. It will
No.
be, it's all within this.
FTE count that's
Yes,
on the
absolutely,
table.
yes.
Mr. Hicks, again, would you send this to both town councils and town administrator, town manager, along with the agenda and the other thing that I asked for?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, if I might, I just want to mention that after you've adopted whatever the final budget is, we will formalize that document. So all of our references now on your documentation talks about administrative recommended. We will go back and re-wordsmith all of these documents and change it to school committee adopted original budget. So we're going to codify it. That document is the one that I would like to give to Dr. Hicks to release to the community as well as post on our website as the official school committee approved document that we'll all reference going forward.
That's fine with me, Tony. I have no problem with that. It's just that we always have had a history of copying the town councils on our minutes and our budgets every month. And that stopped for quite some time, and I want to get it restarted. So that's why I stated it. How you want to present it it's your project and it's your great work, and I'd rather you presented it the way you wanted it to be presented.
We will get it out by Thursday.
I
It'll be out the door Thursday.
you know, you worked enough nights. I just want to make sure that we get started back in that cycle so that they can know what we're doing and they can understand where we're going. And I think that's really important, so that's why I asked for it. Yes, Sheila.
I just want to make sure everybody's aware on the school committee. So we're going to be using fund balance, a little bit over $1 million due to, as he summarized in the front sheet, it's 96,000, the reduction in state aid, and then 697 for salaries, and then 265 for purchase services. So just make sure we're all aware and we all kind of understand that having those increases in salaries is going to have, we're going to be having to use fund balance of over $1 million.
I understand that. That's kind of where I voted no a few votes ago. I don't want, I want to stay in the black. I don't want to go into the red if we can avoid it. All right, did I ask for a vote?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Tony, did you want to talk capital or cozy or operations, or did you just want that down there?
Yeah, we'll go jump onto capital. Mr. Wood and I have been going through the capital plan that's been approved by the Rhode Island Department of Ed, and that's been a point of conversation with the school committee over the years. There's actually a nice worksheet in here that broke out all the approved projects, what the projected dates of completion were going to be, that total $11,700,000. And then aside to the actual project, there's a roster that shows which schools we're going to have those projects completed. Mr. Wood and I went through and identified those projects that we're aware of that have in fact been completed, and that left open what needed to be done. So to date, as of June 30th, 2021, the school department has done $7.7 million worth of projects out of a budget of $11.7 million. So it's about $4 million of approved housing aid by the state for projects that we may want to take on. This level of authorization expires June 30th, 2022. And so there's a recommendation for a number of projects that totals $3.7 million that we've articulated in the document. And the way we're going to fund it is that there is currently $2.8 million in housing aid funds sitting in a reserved account for these particular projects. The first cut of the budget shows $2.6 million of budgeted projects that we want to take on using that $2.8 million of cash on hand. There are a number of projects that basically we got money to do the design of projects. We didn't necessarily have the money to do the construction of projects. And so that's broken out in a subcategory on your report. Our expectation is that I'm planning on meeting with the Rhode Island Department of Education and saying, you've got $4 million of authorization for housing aid for Bristol Warren. We have $2.7 million, 2.658 is the number, so 2.7 rounding numbers of approved projects. And within those structures, we've got these construction projects that we were paying for the architect. And so we would be seeking authorization to pay those construction costs because it comes in under their $4 million remaining of authorized projects. So they have money in bank to send to Bristol Warren to do these projects. So this evening, we'd be looking for the ratification of proceeding with the $2.6 million worth of projects that we have cash for in bank. And if RIDE agrees to fund these projects and pay housing aid on them, and last year we received $2 million in housing aid for reimbursement for prior years. So even if we only receive $1 million, we would have money coming in October to pay the extra costs that are on the table. So those extra projects would not take place until January, February, March, because first the engineer's got to design them, the architect's got to put them out to bid, etc. So we're going to do that because we have the money in the bank to do that. That will get us to October, November. We will know we get the cash in from RIDE, that I'll have cash in bank. We will report to you on that receipt of that cash, and then we'll proceed to go out to bid and line up the contractors to do those lower half projects. If those numbers don't come to fruition, or if RIDE says we cannot approve that and give you housing aid on those projects, then we won't do them this go around. But those will be the first projects that are going to be on the table for the next approval, for where we're going to be pursuing RIDE for housing aid for the next 5 years on a host of new projects, which the building committee is working on. So this evening is approve the $2,658,000 based on current funding, and approve the balance of those projects contingent upon receiving RIDE approval for housing aid this year and receiving funding from RIDE in our October and our March payments. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think Tom has done a nice job going project by project, building by building, and to let us know where we currently stand in all the work that's taken on in the district. And we appreciate your support historically. This is a lot of work to achieve in a 4-year window, so congratulations to you.
So do you need a motion for us to approve?
Please.
I need a motion.
So
to-
moved.
I need a second. I hate to ask this, but could you restate the motion?
Happy to. Authorize the capital projects program for the current school year of $2,658,000 based on current funding, and in the additional projects as listed for total cost of $3,779,000 based on RIDE approving housing aid for those additional projects and the receipt of housing aid this year to fund those additional projects.
All right, thank you. Anybody have any questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Again, would you send that along with the other things to the town council? Thank you. Next, you're still up, Tony.
Okay. Last but definitely not least, we have before you the COSI program budget. I think she's done a nice job giving us projected expenses for the upcoming year. This is expecting full participation of students. She did a revenue analysis showing that we're looking at a slight increase in fees for the program. We're not at the rates that were charged back in FY 2019, but it is slightly elevated to reflect the extra costs. Full breakout of what kind of support we're receiving from DHS, as well as fees that the students pay to attend the program. Happy to answer any questions, but I think the document self-explains, self-read. If we receive all the students, the program is projected to have about $100,000 worth of surplus. I'm cautiously optimistic, but if we don't have those numbers of students, there's still the resources to support the program the way it's currently constituted. So I recommend adopting the budget as presented. Thank you.
Great, so I need a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And you can close your mouth. Thank you very much. The last thing on our agenda is the superintendent search process, which Mr. Hicks sent to you. We don't need to approve it. We just need to ask if there's anybody that has any questions about it.
I have one question.
Go for it.
In the interview committee, it has, it would be chaired by a school committee member and include parents, teachers, non-certified staff, administrators, and a student or students. Should we also include a community member? So maybe not somebody that is, that has a child in the district, but is just a community member.
Good idea.
No, I was going to say I've never seen that done, but that doesn't make it an okay thing to do.
Well, on another committee that I served on for
Okay, I mean-
superintendent, it was, so that's why I'm asking.
I'm turning to Bob to see what,
I have seen that before. It would not be the first time I've seen that happen. It's certainly a valid idea. Absolutely.
all right, thank you. Anybody else? All right, I need a motion to adjourn. Yeah,
Motion.
Oh, to accept the search
Yes,
process?
to accept the plan that the superintendent's proposed for the, I think you should make a
I
motion
need,
and accept
okay,
it.
I need a motion.
I'll do it. Motion to accept the proposed superintendent search process.
Thank you.
Second.
Thanks. Discussion.
Can I just clarify as amended?
Okay, that was
Right.
going to be my question. Do we amend it
Right,
now?
as amended, he knows to add a community person.
Okay.
Yes.
I just have one question, and that is,
I can't hear you.
creating the screening committee, what is the process for selection of people who will be on it?
So that's a good question. I think you can ask the groups to, where there are organized groups, you can nominate, you can ask them to forward members. I might contact the PTOs and ask them for parents. I would probably go to the high school and ask them for recommendations of a student or two to serve non-parent community member.
I think,
I would welcome suggestions from school committee members.
or sit teams, there might be somebody from the
Somebody on the
community
sit
on the
team, yep.
sit team.
Yep.
Thanks. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now, could I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah.